Hello everybody, CVM here with BBD yet again, and we're still playing Theros Standard as we lead up to the pre-release. And I have a really sweet deck. It's based off of the Jund deck that was in one of my articles last week or so. So let's go ahead and take a look at it. We've got Young Pyromancer Jund.
So your sweet deck's Jund?
Yes, my
Jund?
sweet deck is Jund.
Is your sweet deck? All right.
Nobody's ever thought to play these color combinations before.
Interesting.
Like none of these cards have ever seen play. Rakdos Return is probably worse than it was before. Just kidding, the card is absurd. So let's take a look at what we have here. So again, it's a Young Pyromancer Jund deck. So we're wanting to have a bunch of awesome spells in the deck, as well as some cards to help facilitate that. So the reason I was looking at Jund in the first place is Sylvan Caryatid, which is one of the new cards. So it is a Utopia tree that has hexproof. Who would have thought that that would actually be good? I feel like it's going to be just like one of the very, very good cards in the new format, especially since we just have so many powerful 4s and 5s.
Yep, and for once, we won't have to rage when our opponent puts ethereal armor on it.
Yeah, it's a hexproof creature that can attack, thankfully. Yeah. So Sylvan Caryatid allows us to accelerate into some of our awesome 4-drops. So we have Xenagos the Reveler, which is one of the new Planeswalkers. Chandra Pyromaster, which is making waves in Legacy and Modern, so it has to still be good in Standard, at least I would think so. And then we also have Pulkranos World Eater. I really like Pulkranos. It's just a giant creature that's very undercosted, that if you get to untap with it, you can put your opponents in some very unfriendly situations, like just being able to kill a couple of their small creatures. Once you have Xenagos, you can +1 it to get a bunch of mana, make him really big, kill an even bigger creature. I feel like Pulkranos is just going to be like one of the defining creature spells as we move forward into the new Standard. What do you think about Pulkranos?
I think the card's terrible and should never see play.
I figured as much.
But I am playing 3 in my deck because I like playing terrible cards, like 5/5s for 4 with upside. So
yeah, he's definitely going to be very good. Now we also have Zhur-Taa Druid just to help us ramp into our 4s. And then we have a Stormbreath Dragon. We have another one on the sideboard, but I definitely just wanted to have access to a Stormbreath Dragon in the main. So, we are just playing a handful of creatures and planeswalkers, but then we just have a bunch of awesome spells to go along with our Young Pyromancer. So, Magma Jet is back. Lets us, kill a creature, scry 2, and make a 1/1. It seems like a lot for 1 mana, or for 2 mana at instant speed.
yeah, I agree.
And then we have Dreadbore and Hero's Downfall. They're the same card, except one of them has double black and is an instant. But I really like these cards and these types of decks now because Planeswalkers are extremely powerful, and having answers for them is going to be very important. And along with Young Pyromancer, it allows me to answer the Planeswalkers, but still continue to pressure our opponents.
Yeah, and I like the fact that you have 6 answers to Planeswalkers between Dreadbore Hero's Downfall and Rakdos' Return.
Yeah, definitely. Speaking of Rakdos' Return, I think that this card is just getting much better as the format changes. It's just, Planeswalkers are very powerful. Just the cards in Standard in general are very powerful, and so just being able to empty your opponent's hand and kill their Planeswalker with just one spell is very, very backbreaking.
And if the format does indeed slow down, as a lot of people are expecting, then stripping your opponent's hand becomes even better.
Absolutely. Now, one of the new cards that I'm the most excited to play with in this deck actually is Read the Bones. So BBD and I both played it in our decks last week, the Whipsadezi and my groundbreaking Esper Control deck. And we were both just super impressed with the card. It lets you find, whatever is the good card in the matchup that you're playing. It lets you filter away bad draws. It lets you, restock your hand if you happen to get Thoughtseize right off the bat. And so in this deck, it does the exact same thing, but it also just helps fuel Young Pyromancer. So it makes a 1/1 itself while I have Young Pyromancer out, but it helps me find like a Hero's Downfall to kill a creature, or a Putrefy to kill an artifact if I need to, or a Rakdos' Return just to completely demolish my opponent, while I'm still putting on pressure with Young Pyromancer.
Yeah, one of the nice things about Scry in a deck like Jund, being a mid-range deck like it is, has the issue of sometimes you're all Thoughtseize Rakdos Return against your opponent's mono red deck, or sometimes you're all Abrupt Decay against your opponent's control decks.
Yeah.
Scrying lets you kind of pick and choose the ones you want against the deck you're playing against.
Absolutely. And the last card I want to talk about as far as the non-lands is Xenagos the Revelers. play in this deck. So we have 6 mana accelerants, the Young Pyromancer, and some creatures to excel into. But I really like how Xenagos plays with, not only with Young Pyromancer, but with cards like Rakdos Return. So, Living the Dream is you can, turn 2 mana guy into Xenagos on 3, make a Satyr. And then on 4, you can +1 Xenagos and Rakdos Return your opponent for 5. And I think that it's very, very hard to lose games if you actually get to do that. And that's just, drawing the cards in your deck is what's going to allow you to do that. Like, these are just all cards that we have some redundancy on. And, it's going to happen probably a lot more often than people would like.
Yeah, I agree. And another thing about Xenagos, too, is you can, if you have a Xenagos in play, you can read the bones. And if you draw cards that are good off of him, then you can, add mana and cast them. And if you don't draw cards that are good off of him, then you can just make a Satyr. So
definitely. I also like how Xenagos plays with, removal spells. In particular, cards like Magma Jet. So, if you already have a creature in play, you can just, if you have 2 creatures in play, you can just play Xenagos, +1 him, and then still Magma Jet your opponent's guy. So, he's just a very, resilient planeswalker since he creates blockers for himself. But he also just, lets you cast 2 spells in 1 turn, which is really sweet.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Unfortunately, we do only have the Red-Green Temple. We don't have the Rakdos Temple yet. I would love to play 6 temples instead of 4 and 2 guild gates. But that's just where we go, and then we just have a bunch of shock lands since we want to be able to cast all our spells and a handful of basics. But yeah, this is the main deck. I'm really excited to try out the deck. I still feel like I'm going to get Ghor-Clan Rampagered into Oblivion, but I do think that I still have some chances. So let's go ahead and take a look at the sideboard. We got a bunch of 1-ofs, to help shore up some matches and some fun cards.
Cool.
All right, we are back with the sideboard for the Jund Pyromancer deck. So first off, we have Peak Eruption, very similar to BBD's deck tech earlier. It's just very good against Steam Vents decks. It's very good against anything using Chain to the Rocks. So
yeah, it can definitely be a hard card to properly pronounce sometimes. So.
That is correct. Sometimes my tongue gets a little tied. We do have some Scavenging Oozes. Now, I really wanted to play Scavenging Ooze in the main, but I don't think that I can afford to play Scavenging Ooze along with the Mana Accelerants and Young Pyromancer. So he is in the sideboard, but I do think there's going to be a lot of times where I'm just going to end up swapping Young Pyromancer for Scavenging Ooze and some other cards.
Yeah, any of the decks where Pyromancer's either too slow to make an impact or just dies to everything in their deck or anything like that, where you might want to get a little extra value. Yeah, Ooze might be better. So
definitely. Now, I opted to play Fade into Antiquity over Destructive Revelry, just because since I felt like this deck is just a little bit more grindy and probably is going to end up being a little soft to Heliod, so I do want to have an answer for Heliod. But I also think that cards like Erebos or Perforos, just any of the gods really, are just going to be very good against these mid-rangey type decks. I don't think I'm going to be able to kill them fast enough to where their god isn't going to matter, so I'd opted to play Fade into Antiquity, but it also handles like Detention Sphere, Chain to the Rocks, Whip of Obsidian, any of the gods' weapons just fine. But I do think that Destructive Revelry overall is just a better card.
Yeah, I mean, it's a better card overall for sure, but I agree that in this deck you probably want this card because, like you said, you're slower, so the gods are more impactful against you.
Now we have the 4th Thoughtseize, the 3rd Rakdos Return, both pretty explanatory. I do have an Electrickery for opposing Young Pyromancer decks. I mean, the card is very, very good, and I expect there to be people trying to play those types of strategies. But it's also very good against just the numerous 1-mana 2/1 creatures that are playable in Standard right now. So I think having access to it's going to be important.
Yeah, and it's also was very good at block constructed against Mono Red. They had Foundry Street Denizen, Legion Loyalist, etc. Fire Fist Striker. Yeah. I'm sure a lot of them will be adding in Young Pyromancer too with some of the burn spells. So there's plenty of X1s that all love dying to Electrickery.
Absolutely. Now we do have a 1 of Primeval Bounty. I think it actually should probably be 2, and I want to play 1 in the main, but I don't think I can fit it. I think that in this type of deck, it's going to be very good. What it's going to give us is just some needed life gain, to be honest, because we have Read the Bones, Thoughtseize, the Shock Lands. We're going to be doing a lot of damage to ourselves. Plus, with Young Pyromancer, you're just going to be able to outvalue them with it. It's just a very, very difficult card for somebody to answer.
Yeah, I like the combo with Young Pyromancer, even though it's not a instant or sorcery to get a token off of the Young Pyromancer. What it does let you do is, every Abrupt Decay turns your elemental token into a 4/4.
Mm-hmm.
Or, that Rakdos Returner, that Thoughtseize off the top, you can like make a token and pump your guy and stuff like that. So.
Yep. But between Xenaghost, the Caryatids, and Zerta Druid, I mean, it can come out very quickly.
Yeah.
We do have a second Chandra Powermaster because the card is very good and I want to play more.
Seems valid to me.
Enough said. Then we have a second Stormbreath Dragon for the same reasons, because the card's very good and I want to play more. And then another Hero's Demise because Elspeth is very good and I want to be able to kill her.
Yeah, Hero's Demise is great at killing legendary creatures during Kamigawa's block.
Hero's Downfall.
Yeah. Hero's Downfall.
It's written right here in front of me and I still said it wrong. But yeah, this is the sideboard. I'm very excited to play the deck. And I hope that it's good because I would like to add it to our gauntlet for Dublin testing. But if it ends up being terrible, then I'll just cry and scrap it.
All right. Well, it would be really sweet if a Jund deck would be good because we haven't seen that in a while. So.
Absolutely.